All right, today we're jumping into something really deep and honestly a little unsettling. It's a psychological dynamic that's so powerful because it's often completely invisible. We're talking about forced empathy loops and how the best part of you, your own conscience, can actually be turned into a cage.
The most striking truth about forced empathy loops is that your conscience is being used as a weapon against your safety. We generally assume that empathy is the moral glue that keeps us human, but in high-pressure dynamics, your own biological drive to soothe a broken person is used to turn your heart into a leash that pulls you back into the path of destruction. Why do you find yourself apologizing for the person who just betrayed you? This is the core paradox of affective hijacking. The moment your desire to be a good person is turned into the mechanism of your own psychological containment. So that's a pretty heavy paradox, right? Apologizing to someone who just hurt you, how does that even happen? Well, to figure it out, we've got a roadmap. We're going to start with how your conscience gets weaponized. Then we'll look at what's called the illusion of frailty. After that, we'll map out the actual cycle of control, get into the psychology behind it, and, most importantly, cover the steps you can take towards self-awareness. We'll wrap up with a really crucial idea, the difference between someone's pain and their permission to hurt you.
All right, first step, conscience as a weapon. We're going to tackle that core paradox of what's called affective hijacking. This is really the foundation for understanding how something as positive as empathy can get twisted and used against you.
Now, a really important point right up front. What we're talking about here isn't about slapping labels on people or trying to diagnose their character. Nope, we're looking at a pattern of interaction where our brains get tricked, nudged into making a huge mistake. We start to misinterpret what is actually strategic fragility for a genuine, vulnerable connection. And that tiny misinterpretation, that's where the whole loop begins.
Okay, so how does this illusion of frailty actually work? That brings us to section 2, where we're going to define the specific tools of control that make this whole thing so powerful and honestly so confusing.
Okay, so there's a clinical term for this, and it's called projective identification. I know it sounds a little academic, but the concept is actually pretty straightforward. Think of it like this. Someone feels a difficult emotion they don't want to own, like shame or helplessness. Instead of dealing with it themselves, they behave in a way that makes you feel that emotion for them. They essentially outsource their feelings onto you, so you're the one trying to manage it. This projection, well, it's the engine that makes the whole loop go. And that projection leads right into our next key idea, coercive compassion. This is that moment where your empathy stops being a choice and starts feeling like a demand. You know the feeling. You walk into a conversation wanting to talk about a problem, that's rational accountability, but somehow you end up just managing their emotional meltdown instead. The original issue is completely gone. Pity has been turned into a weapon, and your compassion has basically been hijacked. Does that sound at all familiar?
So how does this actually get a foothold inside our own heads? It's usually through two really common belief patterns. First, there's what's called the villain hook. This is that little voice that says, wow, if I keep pushing this, I'm just being cruel. Look how upset they are. Suddenly, you're the bad guy just for trying to stand up for yourself. Then there's compassion fatigue. You know that deep, bone-tired exhaustion you feel? That's your nervous system literally treating a manipulation tactic like a life or death emergency. And it is absolutely draining.
And this really highlights a massive shift in your role. You see, healthy, active empathy is all about helping someone grow. It's about connection. But in these loops, you're not doing that. You're stuck in what's called passive maintenance. You're not actually solving anything. You're just dropping your own valid complaint just to make the tears stop. Your role has changed from being a partner to being, well, an emotional janitor.
I love this quote because it just reframes the whole situation so perfectly. That fragility you're trying so hard to protect, in this dynamic, it's not a weakness or a disability. It's a social fortress. It's a wall they've built. But here's the devastating part. That fortress doesn't just protect them. It becomes a cage for your agency, trapping you right there inside it with them.
Okay, so we've defined the tools. Now let's get into the how. How are they actually used? This brings us to section 3, the cycle of control. We're going to break down the repeatable 3-step pattern here, and I promise, once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. So here it is, the basic structure of the loop, broken down into 3 clear stages. Step 1, the tragedy prime. Step 2, the reaction flip. And step 3, the guilt-based resolution. Let's break down each one. So, step 1 is the tragedy prime. And what's interesting is that this loop almost never starts with an argument. It starts quietly. This is when someone overshares their deepest vulnerabilities or past traumas really, really early in a relationship. And look, on the surface, this feels amazing, right? Like a deep, instant connection. You feel special. But what it's really doing is two things. It's testing your sympathy threshold, seeing just how much you're willing to take care of them, and it's setting them up as the permanent victim before any conflict even begins. Then comes step 2, and this is the absolute turning point, the reaction flip. This is what happens the second you try to hold them accountable. You say something simple like, hey, when you did that, it hurt my feelings. And instead of talking about their action, bam, they create a huge emotional crisis. We're talking tears, panic, maybe they suddenly feel ill. The focus instantly flips from their behavior to their pain about your reaction. And your brain, bless its little biological heart, sees distress, and your caretaking response just kicks in. You go from trying to state your case to trying to calm them down.
And that leads us to the final and most trapping stage, guilt-based resolution. After this big crisis has completely exhausted you, they demand an apology from you. For what? For upsetting them, for being mean enough to bring up how you felt. And because you're just so worn down and want the chaos to stop, you give it. You apologize. And that apology, it gets stored away as Exhibit A, proof that you were the one who was out of line. The loop snaps shut, and you're caught.
You know, when this cycle repeats over and over, it has a really profound long-term effect called identity inversion. It's a deep cognitive shift. Your brain literally gets rewired through conditioning. Standing up for yourself starts to feel like you're being cruel, and just giving in completely, that starts to feel like what good empathy is. This is exactly why people trapped in these dynamics are so full of confusion and self-doubt. Their own internal compass has been systematically scrambled.
Okay, so that's the how of the loop. Now let's dig into the why. Section 4 is all about the psychology of the loop. What's motivating both people in this really destructive dance?
The whole dynamic really clicks into place when you look at what each person is trying to achieve. The controller's goal often is something called total narrative immunity. If they can permanently own the victim role, they can never, ever be held accountable for anything. It's like a psychological get-out-of-jail-free card. On the other side, the target's vulnerability is often a deep need to be seen as the safe person, the savior. This maps perfectly onto something called the drama triangle, where the controller is the victim, you're the rescuer, and the second you set a boundary, they paint you as the persecutor.
And what makes all of this so incredibly hard to fight is a biological process called affective hijacking. Seriously, this isn't just in your head, it's in your body. Our brains are wired for social harmony. When we see someone who looks like they're in distress, our empathy circuits fire up and they actually suppress the parts of our brain that are used for critical thinking. It's an old survival instinct that, in this context, gets completely turned against us. It makes it almost impossible to prosecute someone you pity.
Phew. Okay, that was a lot of the heavy stuff, the mechanics, the psychology. But now we get to shift gears. We're moving from just explaining the problem to taking action. So Section 5 is all about steps to self-awareness. This is how you start to reclaim your own sovereignty. So where do you even start? Well, it begins with asking yourself a couple of really tough but really honest questions. Is the care in this relationship basically a one-way street? And is vulnerability being used for connection, or is it being used as leverage against you? And to help you answer that, here's a practical tool. It's called the reciprocity audit. And look, this isn't about blaming anyone. It's just about gathering data. Just observe. Who apologizes the most? Whose needs always seem to take priority? When you try to share your feelings, do you get solutions or do you get deflection? And the big one, are you spending more energy managing their emotions than you are living your own life? Once you start seeing the pattern, you can practice something called fact-first awareness. This is an incredibly powerful way to stop that reaction flip as it's happening. All it means is that you intentionally hold on to the facts of the situation. You can acknowledge their emotion, sure, but you don't let it hijack the topic. Something like, I hear that you're sad, but you still did X and it caused Y. You are refusing to let their feeling erase the facts. And this simple statement, this is a game changer. It's a fundamental mental boundary you have to draw. Just saying this to yourself, I am not their therapist, isn't cruel. It's an act of clarity. It's recognizing that it's not your job to fix their deepest issues, especially when the price of admission is your own mental health. Okay, this brings us to our last and, I think, most critical section, pain versus permission. This is really the big idea I want you to walk away with today. Please just let this one really sink in for a moment.
Someone's pain is an explanation for their behavior, but it is never an excuse for your mistreatment. You can have all the compassion in the world for why someone does what they do. You can understand their history, their trauma, all of it. But that understanding is not a free pass for them to hurt you. An explanation is not an excuse, period. At the end of the day, these loops only work in the dark. They feed on confusion, on self-doubt, on you not trusting your own reality. So awareness, that's the flashlight. Recognizing the pattern, understanding how it works, that's the primary tool you have. It's the one thing that ensures someone else's crisis doesn't get to become a cage for your autonomy.